In 2011, Apple and Samsung walked into a courtroom and walked out as mortal enemies. What followed wasn't just a lawsuit, it was a global war that reshaped how phones are designed, sold, and used. Billions of dollars were lost. Entire product lines were copied, killed, or reborn. And by the end, one company rewrote the rules of the smartphone industry. This is the real story of Apple versus Samsung, and how the smartphone war was actually won. Before smartphones ruled our lives, phones were simple. Buttons, small screens, basic features. Then in 2007, Apple changed everything. Steve Jobs walked on stage, pulled a black rectangle from his pocket and said, "Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone." That moment didn't just launch the iPhone. It declared war on every phone company on Earth, and no company felt that threat more than Samsung. Apple and Samsung could not have been more different. Apple was obsessed with design, control, premium experiences, a closed ecosystem. They built few products, but perfected each one. Samsung, on the other hand, believed in speed, scale, experimentation, dominating every price point. They built everything: TVs, chips, fridges, and phones. Fast. At first, Samsung wasn't Apple's rival, it was Apple's supplier. Samsung made critical components inside the iPhone: displays, memory chips, processors. But here's the twist. While Apple was building the iPhone, Samsung was watching, learning, and preparing to compete. By 2010, Samsung wasn't just a supplier anymore. They were about to become Apple's biggest threat. In 2010, Samsung released the Galaxy S big screen, touch interface, minimal buttons. Apple noticed immediately. In 2011, Apple sued Samsung for copying the iPhone. They accused Samsung of stealing the design, the interface, even the way icons looked. But Apple didn't stop there. They went after details most people would never notice: rounded corners on the phone body, the grid of colorful app icons, even the shape of the packaging box. Apple was willing to fight over every pixel, every curve, every detail. Samsung fired back with their own lawsuits. They claimed Apple stole their wireless technology. What followed was one of the largest legal battles in tech history, spanning the US, Europe, Asia, and Australia. At its peak, Apple demanded over $2 billion in damages. But here's what most people miss. This wasn't really about money. It was about control of the future. And while the lawyers fought in court, the real war was happening somewhere else. In stores, in pockets, in the hands of millions of people deciding which phone to buy. While Apple fought in court, Samsung fought in the market. Apple stayed focused. One iPhone per year, premium pricing, tight ecosystem, loyal users. Samsung did the opposite. Dozens of phones per year, every screen size, every price point, every market. If Apple wouldn't sell you a phone, Samsung would. And Samsung moved fast. Bigger screens, new features, faster hardware. But here's where the story gets interesting. Samsung wasn't just copying anymore. They were innovating. Larger displays before Apple thought they made sense. Stylus support, removable batteries, expandable storage. Samsung believed in choice. Not everyone could afford a $1,000 phone. And Samsung wasn't going to leave those customers behind. They built phones for students, for seniors, for emerging markets. If Apple was exclusive, Samsung was universal. By 2012, Samsung had overtaken Apple in global smartphone sales. It looked like Samsung was winning, but sales weren't the whole story. Here's what most people miss. Samsung sold more phones, but Apple made more money than everyone else combined. How is that possible? Because Apple didn't sell phones. Apple sold status, ecosystems, lock-in, iMessage, App Store, AirPods, Apple Watch. Once you bought an iPhone, leaving became expensive. Not just financially, socially. Green bubbles versus blue bubbles, FaceTime calls, shared photo albums. Apple built a world where leaving meant losing connection. Samsung dominated volume. Apple dominated profit. Here's the twist that nobody saw coming. While Apple was suing Samsung for copying the iPhone, Samsung was still building parts inside the iPhone. Apple's biggest enemy was also its most critical partner. That's not just business, that's personal. By the mid-2000s, the industry had split into two camps. Apple controlled most smartphone profits. Samsung controlled most Android users. The war divided the world, and Apple liked it that way. So who won the smartphone war? If you measure by units sold, Samsung. If you measure by profit and influence, Apple. But here's the deeper truth. Samsung wanted to be the biggest phone company in the world. Apple wanted to be the most important company in the world. Samsung got what they wanted, but Apple got something better. Control. Apple proved that you don't need the biggest market share. You need the most valuable users. Control beats chaos. Samsung survived by adapting. Apple won by defining the battlefield. Today, every smartphone looks like an iPhone. Every company follows Apple's lead on design, on pricing, on ecosystem strategy. And Samsung? They still play catch-up on ecosystem power. The war didn't end, but the rules were written, and Apple wrote them. Apple versus Samsung wasn't just a phone war. It was a lesson in strategy, in branding, in long-term dominance, and it explains why the smartphone industry looks the way it does today. Because in corporate wars, the company that wins isn't always the one that sells the most. It's the one that controls the future. Next time, we're covering Coca-Cola versus Pepsi and the marketing stunt that almost destroyed both of them. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it, because the next war, it's even bigger.